Coaches, welcome back to the Cutting Edge Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Gromer. After a couple-year hiatus from the podcast, I'm excited to start publishing some conversations again. I thought the best way to relaunch things would be to replay one of my favorite conversations with Joe Ehrmann, the author of InSideOut Coaching and the founder of the InSideOut Initiative. Joe has been named the most important coach in America by Parade magazine, and the Institute of International Sport chose Joe as one of the most influential sports educators in America. He is currently the president of the InSideOut Initiative, an evidence-based, systems-level approach that inspires and catalyzes communities to transform the current interscholastic sports culture to one that values the human growth and development of student athletes. In this episode, we dive into all things transformational coaching and leadership. And I'm excited to share that this podcast is now powered by RYG Athletics, a proud provider of Nike sports camps. To make a really long story short, I launched some sports camps locally in Northwest Arkansas a few years ago, and prior to the summer of 2025, I brought those camps under the Nike Sports Camp umbrella. In summer 2025, we served 423 athletes across 3 basketball camps and 4 volleyball camps in 4 different states. In summer 2026, we'll likely serve somewhere between 750 and 900 athletes in basketball, volleyball, and football camps across 8 different states. If you're interested in learning more about our camps or becoming one of our Nike Sports Camp directors, check out the links in the show details. And as always, if you'd like the free podcast notes, just click on the link in the show details to download a free PDF. Now to the show. Enjoy. Coaches, really excited to welcome Coach Joe Ehrmann to the podcast today. Joe, before we start, I just need to take a minute and say with the audience listening, kind of what I said to you when we first connected, mainly thank you for your work and your book, because like I told you, it was incredibly influential in my life and my coaching journey to read your book when I began my coaching career, because it helped me put a lot of words to the experiences that I had as an athlete, which were the majority of were really positive, with a lot of transformational coaches in my path. And it helped me just gain so much clarity around my purpose and my vision for the kind of coach I wanted to be and the impact I wanted to make. And so I just want to say thank you for writing the book, for sharing your journey, and for the work you're continuing to do with coaches, because it's deeply impacted me, and through that, I believe will just deeply impact, hopefully, a lot of athletes on their journeys.
Well, thank you very much, Luke. And, it's kind of my payback. Sports has helped change and sustain my life. And I know it can be a power for great good or not so good. So you're the kind of guy in your spirit. I look forward to reading your book one of these days.
Well, yeah, when and if the time comes, I'll be sending it to you. Maybe for an early read, so I can get some feedback from you on it. Well, let's start off and talk about this. Let's talk about, as coaches, this kind of search for self-transcendence and deep meaning in the coaching work that we're doing. Tell me your thoughts on that and why it's so important.
Well, I think transformational coaches versus transactional coaches are always other-centered. They've been able to move above their own egoic needs, their own self-actualization or self-aggrandizement to actually serve people, to change the arc of student athletes. So spirituality to me is the quest for self-transcendence. It is the process. There's a 5,000-year history of religion in the world. And I'm seminary trained and ordained in 87. But in that 5,000-year history, from indigenous religions all the way to the major religions today, there's always been a path of inner spiritual transformation. So those things come about. I've done the collective work on this, and they're really about self-understanding. You need to know who you are as a coach, what your strengths are, what your passions are, what you need to further develop. The second part of that is self-compassion. Once you understand your own life narrative, then you really need self-compassion. We're very hard on ourselves, particularly as coaches. We all have this inner critic in our minds, this judge, the dark rider, or the crazy roommate that speaks to us all the time. And when you see coaches going off on some 15, 16-year-old kid because they blew a coverage, that's really not about that student athlete. It's really about the unprocessed work of that coach. So we need to be more compassionate toward ourselves, change that voice. What we've got to recognize is that you're not the voice, you're listening to the voice. The voice is the audio of your own life narrative. Self-understanding, self-compassion, then all of us need some kind of meditative practice in order to quiet that voice so we don't have to listen to that voice. And then really mindfulness is the ability to walk onto the field, to walk in life with an open heart, to actually be in the moment, not going in the past or projecting in the future, being present with young people, because I think coaching is all about a context to provides a context to look some young person in the eye and affirm and validate their dignity, their human potential. So that really takes other-centeredness to do that. And that's coaching and mentoring are similar things.
Yeah. I love what you talked about there as far as the inner critic goes, because, and I know this isn't, specific to coaching. This is just people and life. It's some of these things that we're talking about here. But I think in coaching, where your job and your performance of your team is on public display, and you're getting judged on that, or you're feeling that pressure, it just amplifies the opportunities for that inner voice and inner critic to control us in a lot of ways if we're not aware of it. And you talked in there about it really comes from understanding your own life narrative and some of these messages or maybe themes that are now playing themselves out. Can you speak more to that? Like what's this journey that we as coaches need to go on to understand our life narrative and how that maybe affects our behaviors in some positive or negative ways?
Yeah, well, we need to be able to sit and contemplate. Many of us have experienced, have had experiences that we either deny, ignore, or repress. That inner critic is always trying to keep us from being shamed or from it keeps you from stepping outside of your comfort zone. It's a critical thing that'll keep you from growing as a coach, because you'll just start repeating the same speeches every year, the same interaction with your players. So the narrative work comes out of it. It's called attachment research. 60 years ago, the psychologists in Great Britain working what we then called juvenile delinquents. He started to make the connection between the way these children were parented and early exposure to violence to their outcome. Long story short, he ended up asking the question, or ended up proving the point, that the single biggest predictor of a parent's ability to optimize the human potential of their child is when that parent has made sense out of their own life. It provides a continuation of communication. You don't have these triggers going off from your past. So I think if we're going to be optimize the human potential of our players, socially, emotionally, athletically, develop character, then it's imperative that we know our own narratives, and gives us the freedom to talk about everything that young people need to be able to talk about. So the first chapter of my book is as honest as I could be about the narrative. So, I was always marked by two things: a father wound. Father wound is any ongoing psychological, relational, social impact that's negative. It wouldn't have happened if you had a healthy relationship with your father. But I think the number one common denominator in the NFL and in sports is father-son dysfunction, because it makes you strive to achieve. It's really a pathological drive to success, because you end up not caring what the cost is to your own family, to the people you love and care about, because you're so driven to get to success in expectation of the love and acceptance of your father to be elevated. So narrative work is absolutely critical, because all lasting and meaningful change starts on the inside and works its way out. So that's why we call it InSideOut work. You just can't slap on new language from the book or new thoughts. You have to internalize them. And all of us have our own transformative power. But to transform the lives of young people, you have to experience transformation yourself. That creates an aura, a field of transformation. And that's what ends up making your field, your court, your pool, whatever it is, that then becomes sacred place. It's holy space. You walk on there, and that space where you're changing lives transformationally. So your heart's got to be open. You got to be healthy and well enough in order to do that.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I got chills as you were talking about that sacred space. It's this transformational space where this is about growing and developing. And like you said, it starts with us. I'm really curious as you finished your playing career and you transitioned into then eventually coaching. What were some of the shifts in your coaching behavior when you started to understand your own narrative at a greater level, like we were just talking about?
Yeah, it moved you from transactional or having little or no impact to transformational. Biggest shift in my life was I was in my seventh year of professional football, and I watched my little brother die of cancer over a 5-month period at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. Following his funeral, that had me sit and wonder, what is my purpose in life? Your purpose can't be to make it to professional football. Your purpose isn't coaching. Those are goals that get you to purpose, but all of us are on earth. We have some kind of responsibility, not only to love and allow ourselves to be loved by others, but we need to make a contribution to the broader society. So they put me on a purpose path. Now, there are many missions, and I've gone on many missions, from coaching to all kinds of things that I do now, really as a thought leader. But that led me into seminary. In seminary, I started further trying to develop my sense of purpose in life. That took me to the inner city in Baltimore. I spent 17 years in one of the poorest communities there, just underserved, victims of all kinds of societal ills and injustices. And that allowed me to viscerally feel racism and poverty. And that really changed my perspective in life. So it's an accumulation of things, but that was the foundation for my coaching. I was coaching at a big private school at the same time I was working with families and a community and boys and girls. These were kids of, most of them were kids of great privilege. And with that privilege comes a responsibility. So all of us have this responsibility, but that's my path. And, I continue to stay on that purpose path. We all have some noble purpose in life. I think you got to identify that. And coaching sure is a part of that, because when you do it right, boy, you not only impact student athletes, their families, you can impact the community and the broader society. So transformational coaches are always connected to some kind of purpose in their life, even though at various stages of life, you can't name it or explain it or identify it. It's just kind of an instinctual gut feeling. This is why I'm here. And then when you look back over your narrative, you can see why you do what you do. So as a transformational coach, my transformational coaching purpose was I coach to help boys become men of empathy and integrity who will lead, be responsible, and change the world for good. that came directly out of my life narrative. Wounded by my father, wounded by an adverse childhood experience that I suppressed for 47 years. And I was one of those boys always questioning what it meant to be a man. Didn't have a real, my father was very angry and abusive, and wasn't there a whole lot. But I was always looking at other people. What does a man do? How does a man act? And that was a big part of my struggle and journey, was just figuring that out. So then I thought, well, why aren't boys intentionally taught that? Why are we just victims of societal messages or messages from people that have power and authority of us? Masculinity it's a social construct that varies from socioeconomic, racial, cultural thing, but every man ought to have his own definition of what it means to be a man or what it means to be a woman. And you define who you are, what your values, what your passions, what your skills and opportunities are.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And that was one of the things that I wanted to talk about, connected to that, as far as, developing the character of the athletes we coach. And, I love some of the things you talk about in your book about, character. It has to be intentionally modeled and it has to be intentionally taught. And both of those things I think are challenging in their own right. But I think that it's the power is when we do both of them, right? It's incredibly important to model, but if we just model it and we don't teach it, we're missing something there. And then if we try to teach it and we don't model it, that's just a waste of time, right? And so I'd love to just hear your thoughts and maybe even some of the things you guys did at Gilman when you were coaching there to do both of those things. How as a coaching staff were you intentional about modeling the character that you wanted to develop in these young men, and then two, actually teaching it to them?
Yeah, well, character is learned, therefore it can be taught, but it can't be learned if it's not modeled. So, there's two types of character. There's performance character, which governs your relationship with yourself. So things like grit, self-determination, overcoming obstacles, those really are part of American sports. But the other form of character is moral character. That governs our relationship with other human beings. So that's respect, trust, empathy, kindness, moral courage. Those have to be intentionally taught and grown. And again, as you said, you have to model that. So I think every coach, you got to figure out what are your highest performance characters and then what are your highest moral characters. So you ought to identify at least two of those, define them. So you have a common language, common understanding with your players, and then think back, why are those, why is grit your highest performance? Where does that show up in your life? Who modeled that for you? How did you learn that was so important? Because that's part of your narrative. Same thing with moral character, empathy. Why is that important to you? Who modeled, taught? How did you learn that as a kind of a key moral character? And that becomes part of your coaching story. So if you have a transformational purpose, it usually includes either performance or moral character or both. But that's a story young people want to know. So the 4 questions in the book: why do I coach? Why do I coach the way that I coach? What does it feel like to be coached by me? And how do I define success? Well, that's the narrative young people need to know. That's what you need to teach them. You need to process that. They want to know who you are, why you show up to them every day, why you're coaching the way that you do. What is the feeling that you're trying to create with each one of your players, and what's the definition of success that transforms or goes beyond the scoreboard? So your definition of success has to flow out of your purpose statement. I can't say my purpose is to help boys become men and then measure success based on win-loss records, championships, that kind of thing. It has to flow out of what my purpose is. So they want to know who you are. So that. And then they want to know, why is grit so important? Who taught you that? How did your grandfather show that to you? What's the life experience growing up in a certain time or a certain way? And the same thing with moral characters. We as coaches need to understand that. But in our narratives, in developing transformative relationships with student athletes, the best way to do that is by sharing who you are, the process that you've engaged in, where you currently are as a coach, and still where you strive to become. None of us, are in total alignment with who and what we are as people. So you just can't stand up and read a character lesson to kids and then go coach in a way that violates every one of them. And even if you kind of model it with the teaching, it's always way more powerful. Eye to eye, hand to hand contact with young people, because they, student athletes don't remember everything that you said to them, but they always remember how you made them feel. And that's how you create a team culture. Every coach believes culture is important, but how do you actually create that? What's the culture you have to have a culture that supports your transformational purpose statement. So culture lives at the intersection of your transformational purpose, your performance and moral character skills, your definition of success. At that intersection, then you create culture around that. So I think I stayed in the ballpark there somewhat.
Yeah, I love that. I love that concept of, this is our culture is the intersection of these philosophies and these values and these moral and performance character traits that we're striving to instill in our athletes to help them, transform and grow as people on their journey. Go ahead.
And it creates teammates. And, we live in a world of pseudo community. We have these kind of lack of any kind of depth relationships with people. We have this pseudo community. Nobody knows really who we are. We might answer if we're asked at some surface level, but that inner critic is always keeping back the things you haven't yet accomplished, all the fears that you have as a man or a woman, what you're afraid of. And so you've got to know the answer to those things before you can create a culture. So what is your definition of success? What are your performance, moral character skills? And your transformational purpose statement. And success always has to be around intrinsic values. Intrinsic values, when young boys and girls show up to play, recreation or youth sports, they're motivated to play that sport just because they want to participate in that sport. They want to be teammates. They want to have fun. The problem is, beginning in youth sports, we start adding all these extrinsic values. So now it suddenly becomes about a scholarship or approval from someone or trophies or rewards. And we take the joy out of that. That's why 70% of young athletes drop out by the age of 12. So you have to, three things. You got to build relationships with your players, teach them how to build relationship with their teammates. You've got to ensure that they are having fun. And the third thing, they need to get better at the game. So intrinsic motivation is autonomy, the freedom to show up on that field who you really are with all of your developmental needs, mastery, which is developing a skill level, and then purpose. Purpose is finding your sense of identity, your value, your contribution to the world. And success has to be built around those three things. Winning is important. You play, plan, and prepare to win, but that's only a goal. That only helps you get to what the real purpose is.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned a little bit earlier, and then I think it undergirds what you just talked about there, was the importance of empathy in our coaching. And, what you just shared there, it's all about, and we've got to consider, why the people that we're coaching are in front of us. why are they actually there? And what does that mean for us as coaches? And then considering, what are their needs? Considering how does it feel to be coached by me, right? What does it feel like to be a part of this team? I'd love for you just to talk more about the critical importance that empathy plays in our coaching if we really want to be transformational.
Yeah, and I think empathy plays a critical role in every relationship. It's really hard to develop meaningful relationships apart from some kind of empathy. Empathy is the ability to feel into another person, not only understand what they're feeling, but what causes those feelings. So it goes back to the beginning on that, inner spiritual transformation, self-understanding, self-compassion, meditation. You have to just at points sit down as a coach and reflect when you were the age of your coaching. Think about all the challenges and difficulties you had as a preteen, as a young teen. Your body's morphing, it's changing, you're not sure what you're becoming. You get up in the morning, you go to school every day, you got to get there, have breakfast, then you go from class to class, subject to subject. Every time you change classes, you've got peer pressure, you've got parental pressure, you've got performance pressure, you've got sexual pressure. You have all these pressures taking place. And then at the end of that day, they walk onto your field. What does that feel like? So the principle is that you need to be the coach that you needed at that age. Only be that coach now. Be the coach that you wanted. Just understand your own challenges and difficulties. Teenage is an incredibly confusing, conflicting stage. Not only do you have this hormonal change, but your whole your brain is being rewired at that age. So trying to just sit and think about them and get away from your own egoic needs, what you're trying to accomplish, but how do I meet the needs of my players? So, my two highest performance characters and moral character skills in my transformational purpose statement are empathy and integrity. So empathy is critical, and integrity is the integration between what you say, do, and think. All these young people come on the phone, on the field. They want to know, can I trust you? Do you like me? Are you really about something other than the game? And integrity and empathy are critical to having transformative relationships. You can't say one thing and act in another and expect that it just doesn't work that way. So, that's kind of empathy and integrity. And you got to know your moral character skills, and we call them skills. They're not traits. Traits implies something that's hardware. All skills are developed, and all of us have grown socially, emotionally, and in character, in community with other people. So it's something it can intentionally develop.
That's so challenging, right? Even just the language we use to talk about these things, they're skills. They can be built, they can be developed. They're not intrinsic. If you have it, it's because it was taught to you. You had experiences that shaped it. I think that's so important for us to remember and keep at the forefront of our mind. And I wrote down what you said just a minute ago, that we need to be the coach that we needed at that age. And yep. I think that is just such a powerful way to frame our role and to connect back to what we started talking about with understanding our own narrative. What did you need there? Who was the coach that delivered what you needed when you were that young person? And what did they do? How can you emulate that coach that played that positive role? Who was the coach that, man, they didn't provide what you needed? They missed you, right? Maybe even the way they coached damaged you, right? Like stay away from what they did, right? And just continually coming back to that question of, man, what did I need when I was a 16-year-old boy, right? Trying to figure out who I was and where I belong in this world. I think that's so critical for us to continue to consider and come back to, not only, as we prepare for a season, but within the midst of a season and the individual situations that occur with athletes, be it maybe it's violations of our team rules or standards, or conflicts that they have with each other, just continuing to come back that, what did I need when I was in their shoes, is just so powerful for us to consider.
It gives you the doorway, but basically every study shows the longer students play sports in America, the higher level they attain, the more morally and ethically callous they become. There's something in American sports that's leukemic to developing, these traits that we need of every citizen, every community member. But when you put your own ego, when you put the win ahead of your own integrity, your own words, then it's really problematic. And, that's what I work on now, is how do we transform sports? Why are sports even part of schools if they're not going to be part of education? They have to be teaching and learning. Sports can be in a school, but that doesn't make them education-based, or what we call purpose-based. Purpose-based is connecting student athletes to transformational coaches and a culture of belonging for their social-emotional character development. That's the highest takeaway you get from playing sports, because social-emotional character development, that is the key to success in athletics, academics, vocation, and life. It's often called the missing link in education because those things are no longer specifically taught. That's why I think, the most important class of today is that 9th class out there on your field. You have this incredible opportunity to teach a life skill that's just critical to success by any definition of what that means.
Yeah, that just brought up a thought in my head. One of the coaches that I coach with, he shared something with me. It was either last year or the year before that I just thought was so powerful. I was talking to him about something that had happened in one of my classes and just a struggle. And I was teaching in a classroom, and he said, yeah, the difference between the classroom and our court is that in your classroom, there's a lot of kids in there that don't want to be there. But on the court, every single kid wants to be there. And I think that's the power of it. Like you said, that's why it can be the most important, the most influential period of their day, because, and we could talk about this for a long time, because our society values sports so much, probably too much, right? These kids value it too, right? And if we can take it and use it as a force for good, it's so powerful because they want it. They want to be there. They're so motivated to be there. Unlike in a classroom where you may have a kid that wants to be anywhere else. And so man, yeah, you've got a captive audience with our athletes in sports so often. And it's so important for us to take advantage of it.
Yeah, but it's also countercultural, because what America and young people value in sports is performance, not necessarily the moral development that takes place. It's often at the expense of that. That's a critical part of this whole shift and change that needs to take place. It has to be integrated into everything in a school. Is teaching, learning. Coaching ought to be teaching, learning as well. The other part of that problem is, while every kid desires to be part of that team at the beginning, many young people disengage. When you start treating your players at the end of the bench or on that younger age level, they have the same inherent value and worth as every player does. And your goal is, character means to mark, scratch, and engrave. It's an old Greek word. When that silversmith created that beautiful silver chalice, they would turn that over and put their character on that. In the same way, we want to etch character into every young person in some indelible way. But, we spend so much time talking about courage, kids playing through injury and rehabbing, sucking it up and all this stuff. Yet these very same kids can't stand up to a minimal of peer pressure. The moral courage is what needs to be honored. Moral courage is when we start changing people and culture and society. So we have to we have to be very intentional on that. So that, like me, as a high school, college, I was always the best kid on the team. I was the biggest, the strongest, the fastest, had a successful NFL career as well. But at some point in my life, I came to understand and think about just how courageous it was for some of my teammates. Very little athletic ability, lacked the size, lacked the strength, and yet every day they showed up for practice. Every day they were in the weight room. Every day they did all the running and stuff. That has to be honored. I always use the parable of the talents, which is a biblical story, but to contextualize it is God, the universe, however you want to define that, gives some kid 10 athletic talents, some kids get 8, some kids only get 2. But the kid that has 2 talents or 5 talents and brings them to the team every day, all 5 or all 2 of those, that's more honorable than the kid that has 10 and can slip down to an 8 or a 7. So you want to make sure you have to uphold and you have to integrate every kid on your team. Otherwise, you're going to, in football, where you have a large number of players, you just got kids in the back, man. They're just showing up, but they're disengaged. Same thing with employment. So you have to be very intentional. And it goes back to your purpose. I'm not trying to create great football players. I'm trying to create great human beings. And any kid that wants to be part of my team, boy, that's my commitment to them. I'm going to help them realize their fullest potential. And I'm going to believe in them. I'm going to believe in them. What I tell kids, I believe in you. I don't care what family you're from, what other teachers say, or what's happening. I believe in you because I see this in you. And I'm going to believe in you long enough until you start believing in yourself. And so many kids have given up on themselves by the time they're 12, 13 years old. And then you go in this culture with Facebook and Instagram and all the media stuff, man, it's just dividing and depressing and demoralizing. We have a mental health crisis in this country among young people. Suicide rate are soaring, anxiety, depression. And, COVID just highlighted how fragile every kid's support is and how unequal and unfair they are as well. So it takes great intentionality. When you put your practice plan together, well, you have to be intentional about morally developing young people, making sure everybody's having fun. You got to script that in. We always had captains, but we'd also have a lieutenant of fun. So there's always that one kid on a team that's just a little step off from everybody else. Well, that kid needs to come to you as a coach with fun ideas, and that's what his or her job is. So captains and a lieutenant of fun.
Yeah, that's such a good idea. I love it. Lieutenant of fun. I think what you shared there is so powerful and profound, about a culture of belonging. That kid at the end of the bench, we want him engaged too, and we can't be, treating the star player differently than him. We want them all to have this valuable transformational experience. If we're really about a purpose-based program, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. Right? You talked about the perspective of our culture towards sport, and that really what's valued there is performance and not as much the social emotional development of young people. My question is, as a coach, right? Maybe you're the head coach of a program. How do you align parents, stakeholders, athletes around that larger vision of purpose-based athletics when it is so common to just care about the performance?
Yeah, well, that comes out of doing the work. So when you have a transformational purpose statement, when you have specific moral skills that you're going to develop, when you have a definition based on autonomy, mastery, and purpose, well, you just share that everybody. I wanted my AD, I wanted to be held accountable not the wins and losses, but I want to be held accountable to my transformational purpose statement. When you stand up with a group of parents, by the time they've come through this professionalized youth sports system, it's a $20 billion business in America. It's all based on performance. It's all based on or not all, but most of it's based on extrinsic values. These parents are thinking about their kids, some kind of award or benefit from participation. You've got to be able to explain to everybody what your purpose is, how you're going to define success, and what you're going to develop in their children. So as a coach, boy, I would put your transformational purpose statement on the bottom of every email. That ought to be part of your signature line. I coach too. You want to get that out, and then you need to get that aligned within your school. So we do a lot of work with athletic directors, and we teach them what we call leading from the middle. How do you lead up the educational ladder to principals, superintendents, school boards, and down to student athlete families, and community stakeholders? And all of that is just by having clarity in your mind and then stating this is what you're going to do. And I wanted to be measured on whether I help boys become men of empathy and integrity who are leaders, who were responsible human beings. And that's what you have to do. You have to get alignment. So parents really are your partners. You can't have a really successful transformational, can't maximize the transformational impact unless you have parental support. Every day those kids are going home to parents. They're driving home after games. And you've got to do everything you can to make sure parents understand what your program is. They have all these perceptions. They've got all these unverbalized needs and expectations of you. But at that first meeting, you have to answer all the things they're not willing to ask. So you got to blow that up on parents. I'm not being measured on this. I'm being measured on how I develop your child as a man or woman of character and character skills and development. So you just got to be, redundant until everybody knows. By the time you have that parent in high school for 4 years, they're going to get the message. And then what we did, we always developed rituals and ceremonies based around what the purpose of the program is. So I write in the book, every senior in our program had to write their obituary. Now they have to perceive themselves at their funeral, and either their son or daughter or somebody's reading their eulogy. What is it that you want to stand for? So our players, they were taught that healthy masculinity is about relationship and commitment to a cause or purpose bigger than yourself. So they would get up and read that in our before the last game of the season. And then we would have a banquet after the last game of the season. Whoever wanted to read that reinforced what you were doing. And parents heard firsthand. And we'd always invite the 7th and 8th grade players and parents as well. Because we got to blow this professionalization and adulteration of youth sports. It's more about meeting the needs of adults than it is meeting the needs of young people. And it distorts the whole purpose and understanding. If you're a high school coach, you've got to do that with every set of 9th graders, or if you're a middle school coach, 7th, 8th. If you're in the sports or recreation leagues, and you got to start that as soon as you can. It's also what's going to keep you coaching a whole lot longer.
Yeah, no, that's so good. I love that. Love the alignment of that and the rituals and some real things that we do to bring that purpose to life. And that really segues well into something that I want to do now, Joe. I didn't tell you about this beforehand, but Napoleon Sykes,
my man.
Just
this is the epitome of a
us.
Transformational coach, right
here. Hey, Joe, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about how this could be the evidence of this, right? Everything that we just talked about, I've gotten to connect with Napoleon over the last year a couple times, and I'll let him share this in just a few minutes, but he's the evidence of this, I think, in your life and coaching journey, what we've talked about. And so, Napoleon Sykes, Coach, welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'd love if you just really quickly introduce
Head coach
yourself.
at Lawrenceville High School
in New Jersey.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So head football coach in New Jersey. Napoleon, you played for Joe in high school. Start off and just tell the audience what that experience was like as a player and the impact he made on your life.
Huge impact. Joe's the guy, and for me, I had such a unique experience with football where I was a soccer player, and so like growing up, I was a soccer kid, and really all you knew about football at the time was just what you saw on TV or in movies. And it was like a macho, rough, tough sport, and so coming into really my introduction to coach was in middle school. The high school coaches would come down in the middle school and like kind of introduce us to the overall philosophy of what they were trying to get done in the high school. And then when I got up there to high school, like the first day, the coaches are talking about loving each other and loving the players. And our job as players is to love each other. And the job of the player coaches is to love us, And so, I had such a unique, ground level introduction to football that was so uncommon for most kids. I didn't have the experience of having, the some of the horror stories that you see with youth football. I didn't have that. So like my introduction to football was this philosophy, and this is what I thought football was, and so, after, really once I got to high school and I was fortunate enough to be, good enough to have schools want me to come play college football there, and then go out to different campuses and see what they're doing. And I found that I started to chase that same philosophy as a player. Like I wanted to go play college football, but I wanted to go play college football in a place that was going to nurture me as a man, not just as a football player. I wanted to go somewhere where the coaches like cared about me more than just as a football player, and they ended up going to Wake Forest, and Coach Grove was very similar. Like Coach Grove's best advice to me was, find a place where you enjoy going to school. Don't think about football, like find somewhere where you enjoy the people, where the people are happy and where you feel like people are going to take care of you, and then on the flip side of that, fast forward a couple of years after college, I was fortunate enough to go back and coach at Gilman and work with Coach Ehrmann, which was huge. And like at the time, I sort of thought I wanted to coach, but like going back and being on the other side of it really solidified that whole desire to continue to do that. And like I tell my kids now, like football, like I'm a football coach, but like it's not because I just love football. Like I love football, but what I really love about it is it was just, other than my dad, and like this was the first group of men outside of my dad that talked about being a gentleman, that talked about, caring for other people and being mindful of other people's feelings and what they go through. And so for me, football is just a way for me to continue to do those things, continue to pay forward the stuff that that I got. Like I had such an unorthodox introduction to the sport through Joe and Biff and the staff there. I've just tried to do that on the other side of it, even from a coaching standpoint, just being able to, like, one of the best things that I've had was, in this job is have the opportunity to, not only pass that on to younger players, but pass it on to coaches, show coaches that you can coach a different way. You don't have to yell and scream and do all those things, right? And you can go home at night and be around your families and take off on Sundays and still get everything done. So like there's Joe has been, I haven't minced my words with anybody about it, but Joe has been extremely influential and like instrumental in me being a coach now. You know, like it is at the core of what I do is Coach Ehrmann. I mean, like big time.
Joe,
Napoleon's the motto. You know, our definition of success, or one of the definitions, was, you know, people would ask us if how are we gonna be this season? We would say, we'll let you know in 20 years, because we knew we were planting seeds of character and connection and purpose. And, 20 years later, Napoleon was just outstanding as a young man and was very blessed. All we did was build on what his relationship with his dad was. But if your audience has never read Season of Life by Jeffrey Marks, a story of a football star, a ball boy and a journey into life, it was a New York Times bestseller. But you'll see the man, that character that Napoleon was as a high school student was just so exemplary. And I'm just proud of him. And he's now on my board of directors, and we have 5 or 6 other guys from his era on the board of directors as well, all men of great integrity, character, and all of great family men. He has 2 beautiful boys that I know are going to be great men, and a little girl on the way up too. Yep.
Yeah, man, I love that. I just think that's so powerful, seeing the lineage, right? Joe, from you to Napoleon, and then Napoleon poured into these players that he's coaching now, right? Because that's what it's about. Joe, what does it feel like for you to watch Napoleon coach now, or to hear him say what he just said?
Well, I think, and I've always been a social activist and involved in causes. I think that period of time was one of the most productive, important periods of my life, building into these young men. And we had a great coaching staff. It wasn't just me by any stretch of imagination. But I'm just so proud of him and the other players, because they're all real change agents in this world. And to see him, he's building his own legacy. But, it's what I was talking about, performance versus moral character skills. Performance character skills are really about your resume. It's kind of the ladder of quote unquote success. Moral character skills are your eulogy. And when I think of my own eulogy, I think of people like Napoleon that just validated part of my time on this earth. So it's what every transformational coach longs for. You just want to be able to produce and support and encourage the human growth and development of your players to the point where they become just incredible men, husbands, and fathers. So very important to me.
Yeah. Napoleon, one more question for you.
Yeah.
What did it feel like to be coached by Joe?
It's awesome. I mean, like, to boil it down into one thing, it felt really safe, and what I mean by that is, like, it was like, there's very few times in sports, like in high level sports, that you feel safe enough to not be perfect, or to be wrong, or to, it was a very unique experience, to where, not just me, but just to be able to see other guys, like, you could make a mistake and it not be like you weren't going to get taken out of the game. You weren't going to get scolded when you got to the sideline. It was a very unique situation. Like Coach was talking about Season of Life. I can remember the Mount St. Joe game was like, it was really tough for me. Like, I'd lost a kid that was like my little brother. And that was like the first time, like, all those emotions came back at the beginning of that game. And to have coaches that were in the heat of a game be so mindful of how I felt as Napoleon, not Napoleon, the football player, right, was was huge. Like that's really uncommon. Like it's really uncommon in general for guys to feel that way. But like, I mean, we were in a game. We're on a sideline, like I'd come off the field for my kick return, and like by the grace of God, I didn't get taken out because I like literally I was sobbing, and I like couldn't see. I just was like, I couldn't see. I was sobbing. And when I got to the sideline, like just Joe gave me a huge hug. Like, but that was, I mean, those are those moments. What I mean by like to play for someone where you truly feel safe enough to be who you are as a person, and allows you to become like a better athlete. I mean, it allows you really to grow in so many different ways, socially, like everything. And you're, all the things that that they were trying to do for us, when they allowed us to be us, it allowed us to grow, right? It allowed us to grow in a leadership role. It allowed us to grow as young men. And we had room to like fall sometimes, and it not be the end of the world, or it not be, really like an indictment on who we were or who we were trying to become. It was really a place that we felt like we could grow, and there's not that many times that there's not many times in life where you feel like you are in a safe enough place where you can actually grow, and so that was huge. Like those years at Gilman were, really just, if you could just boil it down to those, 4 football seasons, even as a JV player, like I played JV my freshman year, and very much felt a part of that same community. It wasn't a varsity thing. Like that wasn't like Coach Ehrmann and Biff and the crew, like they focused all that journey and all of that culture into the varsity kids. That was trickled down all the way through the middle school kids. I mean, like that was a really cool time in my life for growth. But it's really why, like, I always tell people, I'm like, I got immersed in it for 4 years, and then I got tastes of it for 2 years as a middle schooler. And so, and then was fortunate enough to find that same kind of philosophy and same kind of environment, same kind of culture for 4 more years at college. So like, like I was, for me, I always tell people, I'm like, I've been like abundantly blessed for my my football experience has been very unusual compared to most people. But that's why, for me, it's funny, like, because like some of the times I say stuff and I'm like, man, that just came right from the guys that I did. But I tell kids all the time, like when they bury me, and hopefully that's not for a long time, but like when they bury me, like nobody, I mean, like, some people may care about how many games I won and all that stuff, but like, it's literally, that's not what I care about. Like, I care about like all the kids that, like, the coolest thing for me right now is, being able to coach college kids for so long. Like, kids are dads, husbands, like they send me pictures of their kids. Like, it makes you feel a little old at times, but I mean, that's what, like, that's like the part that you want, you know what I mean? Like, you get to go different places, and there's, the culture of moving around in college coaching and high school coaching and all that stuff. But like, when it really boils down to it, like the impact that you've had on young men and the families that they create is like, that's the part that's really cool about it. I mean, like, some of it sounds cliche, but it's legit. Like, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I love
Napoleon just recorded we have modules on training, coaching modules on purpose-based sports. Napoleon just did Why Do I Coach? But the universal purpose that we put in there for all youth coaches specifically, I coach with empathy and integrity to develop secure relationships where everyone is seen, safe, and supported. And out of the security of that player-coach relationship, when they know that they're safe, secure, and supported, that's when growth happens. So I'm just really incredibly proud of having the opportunity to coach him.
That's fantastic. And we'll wrap it up there. I think that's a powerful thought to end on for coaches. Joe, I appreciate you a ton. Napoleon, thanks for hopping on. This was fun. I'm grateful to be connected with both of you guys and for the work that you're doing to serve coaches and ultimately impact young people.
Let me just
appreciate it, Luke.
Go ahead, Paul.
No, I'll say appreciate it, Luke. This was awesome.
I'm Joe at InSideOut Initiative. If anybody wants to contact me, and Paul, why don't you give your contact information?
Yeah, it's just the easy one is InSikes, SYKES at Lawrenceville.org. And that's like the easiest way. I got a long, my other emails.
That's great. And I'll put links to that in the show details and links to your guys' Twitter profiles and the InSideOut website, Joe. So yeah, again, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for your time. Thanks for providing some value to coaches.
Awesome.
Well, I want to thank you for the spirit that you bring. I don't do many podcasts, but I appreciate your humility, spirit, and what you're trying to accomplish here. And
thanks, Joe.
So I know Paul would say the same thing. Just wish you great success. We need you.
Thanks.
Keep growing, keep impacting.
It means a ton. It really does.
Ditto. I can't say it any better than that right there.
I love it.
Thanks, I love you, guys. Paul. Good to see you.
Love you too, Coach.
Yeah. All right, man.
Coaches, thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. To learn more about Joe and his work, check out all the links in the show details. And if you're interested in learning more about RYG Athletics and our Nike sports camps, or becoming one of our Nike sports camp directors, you can check out the links in the show details as well. And if you're looking for the podcast notes or you want to join our free coaching community, check out the links in the show details as well. Thanks for listening. See you soon.